So we're going to just start off first of all with a little bit of an explanation of the notes on the ukulele. We have a thing in Western music called the chromatic scale, and the chromatic scale is all the notes that are available in the our music, and they are the notes C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, and so on. And I'm sure you've heard those notes mentioned before. Let's just first of all just see where they are on the ukulele. So if you just locate your C string and just pluck the open C string, just that string, don't strum the whole chord, just the string, you'll hear the note C. If I went to a piano and pressed down the C note, that's not a piano, it's exactly the same thing. Okay, so that's fairly straightforward. Now, if you put your finger on the first fret of the C string, you get the next note going up the chromatic scale, and that will be C sharp. And you'll hear it's just gone up a little bit. And if I go to a piano, that's going up to the next note on the piano, which happens to be one of the black keys, to get a C sharp. Then we go up to the second fret of the ukulele and hold down the second fret and pluck it, and you'll get the note D. So we've got C, C sharp, D. And on the piano, that's the next one after the black note. I'm not going to go all the way up to the end, but there are 12 notes in the chromatic scale. C, C sharp, D. And while I'm getting ready for the next bit, you can just perhaps be exploring your ukulele. Maybe you can just go up there, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, and so on. Bearing in mind, there is no E sharp and there is no B sharp. No E sharp and no B sharp. Right, I'm just going to type that on the screen now, so you should be able to see that. Just holler if you can't. Big white screen. I'm just going to type that chromatic scale across the top because we will be referring back to this every now and again. So C, C sharp, that's the first fret. D, D sharp, E. Like I said, no E sharp, so F is the next note. Then F sharp, we're getting higher and higher up the neck of the ukulele. Up to G, G sharp, A sharp. Yes, after G it goes back down to A again, and that's our limited alphabet. Let's just stretch that out. After A sharp, B, there's no B sharp, so the next note is back to C. There are 12 different notes there, 12 semitones. Yes, going from, just the point there, a little bit of terminology, going from C to C sharp or D sharp to E, just one step up the scale, is known as one semitone. If you go up two, it's known as a tone. So 2 semitones equals 1 tone. And on a ukulele particularly, a semitone is the equivalent of moving up 1 fret. Going up 1 fret on your ukulele. Okay, well that's the thing called the the chromatic scale. That's one thing to just, I'll leave that on the screen because we are going to refer back to that. Now the next thing is to think, well, we're going to talk about a key, because I'm going to explain where the chords come from in a particular key, and that key is going to be C major. I've only chosen it because it's the most straightforward one, but I could have chosen D major or G or A or so on. And the first thing we need to do is work out the C major scale. Now every key has a scale that goes with it, and they are part and parcel the same thing in all intents and purposes. And to work out from the chromatic scale, which is all the notes, your particular major scale, there is what's called a formula. Now this formula is a number of jumps that you go through to work your way up the scale, to work out what notes are in the scale. You'll see what I mean if I just write out the scale. So the formula. The formula is tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. You might have been asked to recite this at school. Well, I certainly was anyway. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone. Until that was logged in my head. Now what it means is you choose a particular key that you want to work out the notes for, we're going to choose C major. So I'm going to type C, because we know that's the first note. And then we go up the chromatic scale by one tone, because that's the first letter in the formula. And a tone, remember, is 2 semitones. So it's 1, 2, and we find we're on a D. That means that the next note is D in the scale. Now, for reasons that you'll see later, I'm going to do this down the screen. Don't need to, but there we go. So we've got to D so far. The next in the formula is another tone, second T, and after D, we're on to E. So that's another tone, and that's an E. So far we've got tone, tone, C, D, E. Now in the formula, the next one is a semitone, the next step, and after E, F is a semitone. So the next note in the scale is F. And then we've got 3 tones on the trot here. So let me just go through them. So E, sorry, we got to F, haven't we? Yeah, to F. Plus 3 tones. So tone is G. Another tone is A. And another tone is B. So F, G, A, B. And then finally there's a semitone, which actually just brings us back to the C at the end. Okay, so that's just really wrapping it up. So our formula, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, has resulted in the major scale that I've shown on the screen there of C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And if you went to any instrument and played that, you'll get the familiar major scale. Now you'll notice there are no sharps or flats or anything else in that, just the regular notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B. However, if we were, we're not going to, but if we were going to spend this session looking at a different scale, such as D major, we would apply that formula starting with D. Now, well, just for the sake of explanation, just so you can see how it differs, just quickly do that. So tone, tone, semitones, that'd be D, E. Now, second tone takes us to F sharp. So notice straight away we've got a sharp note in D. Then it's a semitone to G. Then there's 3 tones after G. So G, A, B. One more tone after B. Well, it's not there on the screen, but it would be another C. It would be C sharp. So you can see by using that formula, but starting on D, we got an F sharp in it, and we also had a C sharp. So clearly, the two are not the same thing. So this is first fact number 1, is that not all keys have the same notes as each other, but they have a lot in common. So the only difference between the key of C and D is that D has a C sharp, C has a C, and D has an F sharp in it, and D major has a and C major has an F in it. So it's the C sharp and the F sharp which are different in D. And every scale you would work out, you'd find there are differences, and that's really how the scales are worked out, the major scales. Now this formula, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, is for major keys, major scales. There are different formulas for minors and so on, so we'll leave that for now. Okay, so far so good? Yep, good, good, good. Right, now we're going to look at where chords come from, because we've got a scale, but we haven't got chords yet. We can write melodies, you know, C, D, E, D, E, F, G, A, B, and so on, but we haven't got chords. Now, a basic chord, a simple chord, the sort we're playing on the ukulele, like D major and F major and so on, are often referred to as triads. So sometimes you will see somebody say, play this triad. It's actually just another word for a 3-note chord, hence the tri. So a triad is a 3-note chord, and the majority of chords that we play on ukuleles are 3-note chords. The ones that aren't are the ones with numbers on the end, like 7, C7, G7. They're 4-note chords. but we're not looking at those today. So 3-note chords, triads, where do they come from? Okay, there's a little formula for them as well, but it's different to the tone, tone, semitone one. It's this. It's you take the scale, and that's C, D, E, and you think to yourself, well, I want to know what the chord for C is in this key. The formula is you take the first, the third, and the fifth note in the scale. So I'm going to write alongside that. What is the third note? Well, C is going to be the first, of course, because we're looking at a C chord. But what's the third? Well, the third isn't D, that's the second. It's E. So the third note of the scale is an E, which means that in the chord of C, there will be the note E. Remember, the chords have got 3 notes in them. That's what makes them have that sound. And you're strumming a ukulele, you're getting 4 notes actually, but 3 notes are all you need. So that's, E is the third. Where's the fifth? It's down here. So C, D, E, F, G. G is the fifth. So I'm going to type G there. Now what I'm going to do first of all, I'm going to backtrack slightly, and what I'm going to do is put down all the thirds for all those chords. We'll come back to the fifths actually. I think we'll do it this way. So you can remember that G will be there when we come back, but let's look at the third of D, because we've got to do this for all these chords. So the third of D, if we're looking for a D chord in the key of C, it's going to have a first, third and a fifth, just like the C chord. The third is not E but F, because D is 1 now, E is 2, F is 3. So I'm going to put the F there. Now if I go, you'll soon see a pattern here, because the third of E is going to be G. It's always going to be the next one down. So I'll put that there. The third of F is going to be the A. So what we're doing is we're working out what all those chords are in the in music, not just the ukulele, that are in the key of C, the key of C major. And I'm just working out the thirds first of all, the third note in the scale. G, if you're looking for a G chord, the third is B. If you're looking for an A chord, A, well, you've got to go back to the top. C is the third one. In other words, we're just going down the alphabet, but starting on the third. Yep, so for each of the chords, each of the 7 chords, I've just written down the third note. So we want the fifth now. The third, which I know there's a lot of thirds and fifths. The third note in the chord is the fifth, if that makes sense, is the fifth of the scale. Now the fifth of C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is a G. The fifth of a D chord, which is across here, D, F, well, it's going to be D, not E, F, G, A. Yeah. I'll just recap this when I've finished, but so if I just carry on, because it is just going to carry on going down the screen. Fifth of a F is C. The fifth of a D chord is D. In other words, we're just following the alphabet, E and F. So let's just recap that then. So we're looking at, take an example in the middle here. Let me just, where's my pointer gone? Seems to have vanished. There we go. Alright, say we're looking for the F chord in the key of C. What's the F chord? Well, it's going to have the notes, the third is going to be the A, so the note A is going to be in the chord, and the fifth is the C. So the 3 notes in the chord F major are F, A and C. Now I let something slip there. I said it was F major. What if it was F minor? How do we know that's a major or a minor chord when the 3 notes in it are F, A and C? One more little thing we need to know is what makes it major or minor. And it all rests on the distance in frets or semitones, whichever way you like to look at it, between the first and the third. Now when I say distance, I'm talking about the interval on the chromatic scale. So I'm going to circle the F up here on the top now. We're on the top chromatic scale, it says F. And we're thinking about A as the third. And I want to determine whether this is a major third or a minor third, because that determines whether it's a major chord or a minor chord. And the answer is, and it's just a rule, is that if there are 4 semitones between the two, so in other words, if you go up by 4 semitones, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, yes, that's 4 semitones, that means that F to A is a major third. That was 4 semitones, and that is just another little solid definition that applies across all music at all times. If the root to the third of the scale is 4 semitones or 4 frets when it comes to ukulele, then you're talking about a major third. Now let's look at another example. Let's do this one here. D, the D chord in the key of C. Oops, wrong. We're looking at the D chord now in the key of C. So that's the root note, D. The third is F. So let's go up here. Might change the colour. So there's your D. How far away is F, which is there? 1, 2, 3. So it's only 3 semitones away, or 3 frets. And that means it's minor. So that's another little rule. 4 frets, you're talking about a major third. 3 frets or 3 semitones, same thing, you're talking about a minor. So that means that this chord here, the second one down, is a minor chord. I mean, it starts on a D, so it's D minor. Simple as that. Well, I shouldn't say it's simple as that, but that's a D minor chord. And this one here was a major chord, the F, A, C, so that's F major. So what I'm going to do now is just, bearing in mind the time and everything else, I'm just going to write down alongside each one quickly what that chord is, whether it's major or minor. Right, so C to E, 1, 2, 3, 4 frets. So that's a major chord. D to F we said was minor, so that's minor. The actual chord, let's put the whole chord in, is called D minor. That's called C major. This one, we're on the E chord now, E to G, E, 1, 2, 3, only 3. Now if I had a classroom in front of me, I'd say, is that major or minor? And you'd all shout out, minor! That's right, that's an E minor chord. So I've got F to A, we've already said that's a major chord, so that's F major. G to B, G, G sharp, A sharp, but you're probably ahead of me now, that's G major. And you kind of know that anyway, don't you, from playing chords, songs in the key of C. If you want to have a go at strumming these chords, just to listen to them, by all means do, or otherwise stay glued to the screen. Here we go with the A chord, and that's A to C we're looking at here for the first to the third. We're not worried about the fifth, not yet. A to the C is a third. A, 1, 2, 3, only 3 semitones, so that's minor. So A minor is the 6th chord. Now, those of you that have been coming to the warm-ups since the beginning will remember that on the first session we played all the chords in the key of C. And they are those chords that we played, those 6 chords: C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor. And we didn't play the B chord, and there's a little reason for that. Now, alright, it's a B chord, and you might be thinking, well, B to D, I've already worked it out before I even said it. B, C, C sharp, D, it's only 3, so it's minor. But it's not, unfortunately. Sometimes referred to as the runt of the litter, which is a bit unfair because it's actually quite an important chord. It's just that we don't play it very often. It's not a minor chord, so I'm going to cross that out. It's got a minor third in it, which is great, but there is something different about the fifth. Now, normally we don't think about the fifth much because it's the same in all chords, but in this case it isn't. So, quick little thing about the fifth. There is a thing called a perfect fifth, and you might have heard this. The beginning of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. That is C to G. I just played C then G. Twinkle Twinkle. And that interval is called a perfect fifth. We know it's a fifth because that's the first, third and fifth, but that's a perfect fifth. And the perfect fifth then, well, we can go back and look at this, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 semitones or frets. So a perfect fifth is fixed in music. It is 7 semitones, a jump up of 7 semitones. Now if you were to look at the next chord, D minor, D to A, that is also 7 semitones, and E to B is 7 semitones. F to the fifth, C, let's just do that one for the sake of example. F, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is C. Yep, so we've proved that that's a perfect fifth. So when it's a perfect fifth, we don't have to mention it. In fact, when you hear the two together, it's nothing special, is it? So there's no point in writing it into the chord. It's just a nice clean note. G to D is also a fifth. A to E is also a fifth. B to F, we're talking about this last chord now. This one we're a bit unsure about. B is, so C is 1, C sharp 2, D 3, D sharp 4, E 5, F 6. It's not 7 semitones, so it's not a perfect fifth. It's a flattened fifth, and flattened fifths don't sound very nice. Let's play a flattened fifth. Oop. Doesn't sound as nice as the perfect fifth. That's the sound of a flattened fifth. In fact, in music, back in the medieval days, that interval was banned from church music. It was known as the devil's interval. And actually it does sound a little bit like that. You weren't allowed to put that in your compositions because it had a disturbing effect on people. We're a little bit more used to it now, but the flattened fifth is not allowed. But it is nowadays. But it means that they're not major or minor chords. It is called a diminished chord. So a diminished chord, although we very rarely play it, is a minor third plus a flattened fifth, as opposed to a minor chord, which is a minor third plus a perfect fifth. Anyway, no more on a diminished chord because we very rarely play it, so no point in spending too long on it. And we've only got a few more minutes to go, so I'm just going to finish off. I haven't seen any questions come up yet, but by all means type them in the box if you want to. What I'm telling you is probably enough to go away with. One final thing is, how do they appear on a ukulele? I mean, why do we play the shapes we play? So, very quickly, I should have prepared these earlier, but I'm just going to quickly draw a ukulele box on the screen. These are the strings coming down, typical sort of chord diagram. That's not very well drawn, but there's the nut across the top. There's the first fret. There's the second fret. My mouse control could be improved. There we go. There's the third fret. Let's just take a random example. Let's just do F as it's already highlighted. So this is how you work out the chords on the ukulele itself. You go string by string and you work out, does that note appear? Do I want that note to appear in my chord? Well, the first string we're looking at is G, and we've just had a first question, so I will just double check it's not something that's too critical. Is a diminished chord flat 5 and flat 3? Yes, that's correct. A flat 3 is another way of saying a minor third. So strictly speaking, it's not a flat 3. It's just a minor third. Well, you can call it yeah. But yes, Peter, that's correct. Yeah, flat 5 and flat 3 is another way of calling a diminished chord. That's right. So we've got the G string on the left here, and if you just pluck that string, the note G appears. But we don't want a G to appear because we're looking at F major, the chord F major, and the notes are F, A and C. So we don't want that note. Now the next note after G on the first fret, remember we were just crawling up is G sharp. Certainly don't want that to appear in an F major chord. Let's go up to the second fret. So the second fret on the G string is an A. And we do want to hear an A in our chord when we strum it. So we're going to put our finger on the second fret of the G string. Let's move on to the next string because we can't put another finger on that string. That's just one at a time. So we're on to the C string now. So that's the second string along. Do we want to hear a C when we strum the chord? Yes, we do. So that means we don't want to put a finger on the C string because we want to hear the open C string ringing. So we're just going to leave that open. I'm just going to put that dot there meaning left open. Hopefully you recognise the direction this chord shape is shown. We're now on to the next string. So that's not G, C, but it's the E string. Do we want to hear an E, the note E, in our F major chord? No, we don't, I hear you all say. Oh, I think I do. But the next fret after E, let's look at the chromatic scale, E is F. Yes, we do want to hear an F. So we'll put our finger on the first fret to hear the note F, because we want to hear that. And then we go to the last string, G, C, E, A, the A string. Do we want to hear an A in our F major chord? Yes, we do. It's the third. So we're going to leave the string open because we want to hear that A. Now it's not a particularly good diagram, but I think you can see that's an F major chord, yeah? Can you get that? That's the first, where the pointer is where my first finger would go. That's where my second finger would go. And that's an open string, and that's left as open. So by taking the notes F, A and C and putting them on the screen, on the fret on the ukulele, you'll create the sound of an F major chord in the same way that if you played F, A and C on the piano or any other instrument where you can play more than one at a time, you'll get an F major chord. So that's how, I'm not going to go through all those chords because it will take a long time, but that's how chords are created on a ukulele, just by simply working out what notes you want, starting on each string and going up the string until you find a note which is in the chord, and then putting your finger on that fret when you come to strum it. And that's how you create all the different shapes of the I'll just quickly put the diminished chord up there just for the sake of a little bit of example. Let's get rid of that. Right, now the diminished is a B, D and an F. Well, I'll just oops, where are we? Just without going through it all, there is a B there on the A string because A sharp B. There is a D there on the C string, C sharp D, yeah, and there is an F there on the E string, first fret. That is your diminished chord. Unfortunately, on the G string, the note is going to be right down too far away for you to stretch to, so we wouldn't strum the G string. So a diminished chord actually looks like that if you wanted to play one. And I think you'll recognise that as being very much like a G7. If we added the note, the open G string, you would actually have G7. So I hope that's not confusing, but a diminished chord, a B diminished, is actually a G7 without the G. But that's a little by the way anyway. That's just for anyone who's interested in diminished chords and wants to explore them further. Righty-ho, well it's time is up, and I did wonder if we would have a chance to do any strumming. I mean, by all means you can carry on strumming after I've finished, but I'm going to say that's it. I'm not going to say any more. I think that's more than enough to be thinking about if you haven't seen that before. Like I say, it's available. It will be available on YouTube to look again. If you wanted to if you really wanted to get this in your own heads, a good way to do it is to repeat the whole exercise, but do it in a different key. So pick another key like G, and go through all the same steps: chromatic scale, tone, tone, semitone. Work out the first, thirds, and fifths. Get all the chords listed, and then you'll see all the chords in another key. Only for your understanding. I mean, you can just look them up if that's all else you wanted to do. Anyway, I'm going to say thank you very much for everybody's patience. I hope you found that interesting. And my mouse has disappeared, so I can't switch it off.
Sorry.
There we go. And just say thank you very much, everybody. Numbers. You know, I was going to say that how many people are here at the end compared to how many people at the beginning. Well, I'm pleased to say there's actually more at the end than there were at the beginning.
Oh,
Now 50
oh,
plus
wow.
couples, whereas
Wow.
it started off being about 40. Anyway, I hope you found it interesting. If you've got any questions, I'll stick around for the next 5-10 minutes or so if you want to hang around and ask.